Which New York signer of the Declaration attended the most Congresses? Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we'll be discussing a man named Philip Livingston. Now, I should note that I had to give the caveat that he was a New York signer because Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania attended the same amount of Congresses as Philip Livingston. Now, I do bring up Franklin because there are a lot of similarities between Franklin and Livingston. Franklin was, of course, more famous then as he is now. Well, that's largely to self-promotion and being a scientist and owning a printing press. So, Livingston made his money a different way. He was a merchant. He made his money during King Philip's War, which was an offshoot of the War of Austrian Succession. And he sold money to British soldiers and the British Army, and he made a lot of money, even though his family was already wealthy. Livingston would go on to go to the Albany Congress. Now, he had never been elected to office, but he was an important person in New York, and they chose him to go to the Albany Conference of 1754. This Congress happened to be put together by Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin and Philip Livingston and several other people discussed the idea of uniting the colonies into one army because the French and Indian War was clearly approaching, and they always had problems with Native Americans on their borders, and uniting into one army would make them more powerful. They also discussed the idea of uniting the colonies under one confederated government in a fashion kind of like the Articles of Confederation, not quite like the Constitution, more like the Confederation. Now, this wouldn't happen despite their recommendation. Many of the colonies didn't want it, and Parliament and King did not want it either at all. But between Livingston and Franklin and Oliver Wolcott of Connecticut and Stephen Hopkins of Rhode Island, there were 4 future signers of the Declaration at this conference in Albany 22 years before independence was had. So they would return home. Livingston would actually, much like Franklin did for Philadelphia, created a lot of institutions for New York City. He helped found the New York City Hospital. He helped found New York City Public Library, the St. Andrew Society, which was an early philanthropic organization in the city, and he helped put together the New York Chamber of Commerce and King's College, what was then called King's College, but is still around. It's known as Columbia today. He helped create all these organizations with his vast wealth that he had made. Within the next decade, Livingston actually is elected to the Colonial Assembly for New York, but there are some problems. And the Stamp Act comes around, and then they have the Stamp Act Congress, which is in New York City, convenient for Livingston, who was then chosen to go to the Stamp Act Congress. He's at the Stamp Act Congress, he signs the grievances that are sent to King and Parliament, changes are made, and another decade goes by. And then the First Continental Congress is called together, and Philip Livingston is chosen to go to the First Continental Congress, where he signs the Continental Association, which was the boycott the First Continental Congress agreed on. Then he goes home, and then New York sends him right back to Philadelphia for the Second Continental Congress, where he signs the Olive Branch Petition, which was after Lexington and Concord. War had started, but it was like the last-ditch effort of the colonists to say, hey, can we sort this out, please? And then the king declared them an open rebellion, so not so sorted. And then Philip Livingston is there when he signs the Declaration of Independence, where he's one of the few New Yorkers to sign that document. Now, he remains in Congress when the British take Philadelphia, and he retreats with them to Yorktown. And unfortunately, it is while they are in Yorktown. Now, mind you, he is 60 or so years old at this point, but Livingston falls ill and passes away in Yorktown, away from the home of New York that he had always lived. Now, very sad, of course, he's actually buried in York, and not Yorktown, I apologize, York, Pennsylvania. He's buried there, and then the Congress actually breaks for the day to attend his funeral because he's so important. And when they return, the first thing they do is they declare the month of June 1778 a month of memorial for Philip Livingston. Now, I did say that Livingston and Franklin had a lot in common. You will notice Livingston did not go to the Constitutional Convention. He had clearly passed away by then, but Franklin didn't go to the Stamp Act Congress, so they both went to the same amount. Obviously, Livingston was an extremely important member of the growth from talking about in 1774 in Albany, talking about maybe we work together a little bit, to the Stamp Act Congress, where that's the first time colonies actually came together and worked together, to the First Continental Congress, to independence. He was there the entire way. And he's extraordinarily important and unfortunately forgotten to a large degree. Despite being part of the Livingston family that had, his brother would be governor of New Jersey throughout the Revolution, William, his other, I believe his cousin, Robert Livingston, was one of the people who helped write the Declaration of Independence. So that's a brief story. I'm not going to get into the whole Livingston family here. That's Philip Livingston. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit like. If you're new here and you want to learn more about obscure founders of America, I put out videos 5 days a week, so definitely hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back to you with another founder tomorrow.